The moment Ryan Voss flashed that confident grin on the company-wide video call and declared, "We're recalibrating KPIs retroactively to better reflect our forward momentum." It's the fair thing to do. The temperature in every home office across Pinnacle Dynamics seemed to drop.
Fair.
The word landed heavy, like an accusation disguised as policy. I had been with the firm for over a decade, long enough to recognize the signs when Marcus Hale froze in place. Marcus, our senior director of contract integrity, sat perfectly still in his Virginia home office, fingers hovering above his keyboard without typing, his usual calm replaced by something colder, more deliberate. He didn't interrupt, didn't challenge, didn't even clear his throat. He just absorbed it, eyes locked on the screen as Ryan paced in front of a sleek virtual backdrop, pitching his vision like a Silicon Valley evangelist. Pinnacle Dynamics wasn't some flashy startup. Headquartered in a quiet business park outside Arlington, we specialized in secure data analytics for federal agencies, health records processing for HHS, logistics tracking for DoD contracts. The kind of work where one misplaced decimal could trigger audits that cost millions and invite government scrutiny. Federal contracts meant layers of compliance, master service agreements thicker than phone books, and clauses that could either protect you or bury you. Marcus Hale was the guardian of those clauses. At 52, he had the steady build of someone who spent more time reviewing printouts than hitting the gym, but his mind was razor-sharp. While the rest of us juggled Slack notifications and quarterly dashboards, Marcus stayed late reviewing contract addendums, highlighting language no one else bothered to memorize. He had been there through the acquisition by a larger analytics conglomerate 5 years earlier. The vendor disputes, the near misses with compliance reviews. Ryan Voss, on the other hand, was the golden boy import. 38, former VP at a VC-backed SaaS company in Austin. He arrived 6 months ago with TED Talk energy, buzzwords like agile transformation and data-driven disruption, and a habit of calling team members rock stars right before announcing budget cuts. The board loved him initially, fresh blood to modernize legacy systems bogged down by government red tape. But Marcus saw through the polish. I remember catching Marcus in the hallway after Ryan's first all-hands, that faint smile where his eyes stayed hard. "Some people treat contracts like suggestions," he'd muttered once. "They forget the paper remembers everything." The recalibration announcement hit like a quiet bomb. Ryan clicked to a colorful slide showing new KPI targets, higher thresholds for project delivery speed, client satisfaction scores retroactively applied to the previous 2 quarters. "This aligns us with industry benchmarks," he said smoothly. Some legacy metrics were holding us back. What he didn't say was that this would wipe out performance bonuses for dozens of analysts, compliance officers, and project leads who had already met the old targets. My own bonus, earmarked for my daughter's college fund, vanished in that single slide. Whispers flooded the internal chat. "Is this legal?" My numbers were solid. "What about the contracts?" Marcus didn't type anything in the chat. He just closed his notepad slowly, the kind of deliberate movement that made the air feel heavier. After the call ended, I messaged him privately. "You okay?" His reply was one word: anticipated. That night, as most of the team vented in private group texts, Marcus drove back to the office despite the late hour. Security footage later showed him unlocking the old filing cabinet in his corner office, the one facilities wanted to replace with digital lockers, but he insisted on keeping. Inside was a faded manila folder labeled MSA Core Provisions, version G, restricted.
He didn't open it then.
He just confirmed it was there, locked it again, and left. The next days brought the memos. Ryan's team sent polished emails about strategic realignment and updating success definitions. Compliance department got folded awkwardly under marketing, creating chaos as junior staff tried explaining FAR regulations to social media specialists. Bonuses weren't officially announced as canceled, just smaller direct deposits with cryptic notes about adjusted payout structures. People like Ben in analytics came out of one-on-ones with Ryan looking defeated. They said past performance models were outdated, Ben told me over coffee. Retroactively, my Q2 target hit is now a miss. The team morale plummeted. Engineers who once stayed late debugging secure pipelines now clocked out early. Resentment simmering. Through it all, Marcus showed up the same way, pressed button-down shirts, the same stainless steel coffee mug from his Navy days, binders of annotated contracts. He attended leadership syncs without a word of protest when Ryan monologued about course-correcting legacy behaviors. But I noticed small things, the way his hand tightened slightly when Ryan joked about outdated spreadsheet warriors, the single note he jotted in the margin of his printout. One evening, after most had logged off, the MSA repository showed a subtle status change on a buried document 4 folder levels deep. Clause 217C. Most had forgotten it existed. Added years ago during a brutal vendor arbitration with a subcontractor over ambiguous performance language. Ryan, oblivious,
Kept pushing.
he bragged in a follow-up town hall about smashing his personal onboarding metrics. Equity vesting tied directly to those shiny new KPIs. He didn't realize he had just stepped onto a tripwire Marcus had set long before he arrived. The clause required unanimous approval from the Executive Risk Committee for any retroactive KPI revisions impacting compensation or federal deliverables. No such vote had happened. When triggered, it would freeze all performance payouts company-wide, flag everything for mandatory federal compliance review, and, crucially, apply to executive incentive structures too. Marcus had written it after watching a vendor nearly bankrupt us by retroactively claiming targets were unclear. Safeguards aren't just for outsiders, he once explained to me privately. They're for when insiders forget why rules exist. By week's end, the first ripples appeared. HR quietly adjusted deposit schedules. Finance teams fielded panicked calls from employees whose family budgets relied on those bonuses. Legal stayed silent, at first. But internal pings started. Did anyone run this past risk committee? Marcus returned to his desk after one such meeting, opened a folder titled Escalation Protocols, version G, and began typing with eerie calm. 5 minutes later, an email hit legal, subject MSA Provision Activation, Clause 217C. No drama. No CC list beyond necessary parties. Just facts. The storm was no longer coming. It had begun quietly, in the hands of a man who believed memory was the strongest defense against arrogance dressed as innovation. The email from Marcus didn't cause immediate panic. It landed like a single pebble in a still pond, but the ripples spread fast. Legal counsel Sandra Klein, always composed in her crisp blazers and measured Zoom presence, opened the attachment within minutes. Clause 217C wasn't flashy legalese, it was precise. Ironclad language buried in the Master Services Agreement Pinnacle dynamics maintained with its federal clients. Triggered by unauthorized retroactive changes to performance metrics affecting payouts. It mandated an immediate hold on all associated bonuses, equity grants, and commission structures pending unanimous risk committee sign-off and a full compliance audit. Because many of our contracts involved sensitive government data, the clause also required notification to oversight bodies if federal deliverables were implicated. Sandra's team huddled in a breakout room, scrolling through the provision like archaeologists uncovering a warning from the past. Metadata showed it dated back 5 years. Added during the straightest vendor dispute when a subcontractor tried claiming our Q3 targets were ambiguous to delay payments. Marcus had insisted on the language then, getting it countersigned by the then CFO and tagged as permanent. No one had invoked it since, until now. This applies to executives too, one attorney whispered. Ryan's own performance equity, heavily weighted toward those recalibrated KPIs he had touted, fell squarely under its scope. His year-one bonus and vesting schedule were now frozen. Word trickled through unofficial channels. I saw Ryan's Slack status change erratically that afternoon, online. Then away. Then back with no updates. He called an emergency huddle with finance and legal, trying to wave it off as legacy boilerplate that doesn't bind modern leadership. Sandra didn't raise her voice. She simply referenced his own offer letter, which incorporated the current MSA without carve-outs. The provision is live, she said flatly. Backdated revisions without committee approval void the triggers. Ryan's face on the video feed tightened, his usual charisma cracking at the edges. He cleared his throat, muttered something about consulting the board, and ended the call abruptly. Meanwhile, the broader team felt the squeeze. Bonuses halted across the board, not just ours, but Ryan's high-profile ones too. Treasury accounts showed red flags on performance-linked transfers. For compensation workflows suspended. Someone joked in a private channel about ransomware. But the truth was worse, a self-inflicted compliance lockdown. Marcus continued his routine unchanged. He reviewed vendor onboarding documents with 3 sets of color-coded notes, glancing occasionally toward the window where afternoon light filtered through Arlington office blinds. No gloating. No victory laps. Just the steady rhythm of a man who had prepared for exactly this scenario. That evening, the board secretary received a quiet package from Marcus, clean copy of Clause 217C. Provenance report tracing its addition and approvals. Zipped access logs showing Ryan's login timestamps on the KPI baseline file. Edits made late at night from his home network. No supporting documentation or committee votes. No commentary. Just verifiable facts. By morning, whispers turned to open speculation, even in engineering channels. Did the new guy just nuke his own equity? The joke carried an undercurrent of schadenfreude mixed with unease. Federal contracts meant every move could invite external audits. One misstep risked losing multi-million-dollar renewals. Ryan arrived at the office the next day looking disheveled, tie askew, eyes bloodshot. He cornered Sandra in a conference room for over half an hour. Witnesses later described his voice rising then falling, hands gesturing wildly at first, then stilling as she presented the audit trail printout. March 12th, 10:03 p.m. His edit. No review chain. His expression shifted from denial to dawning horror as the implications sank in, not only team bonuses frozen, but his own substantial performance grant now under mandatory hold. Compliance attestation for the next federal reporting period invalidated until resolved. He tried arguing the clause was outdated, but Sandra countered calmly. His contract bound him to the governing MSA as written. Marcus, across the building, methodically compared invoice terms on a migration project. Every so often, a subtle flicker crossed his face, not triumph, but the quiet satisfaction of overdue accountability arriving. He had seen flashy leaders come and go, each promising disruption while ignoring the anchors holding the ship steady. The board convened an emergency closed-door session that evening. Restricted floor access activated. Signaling gravity. Ryan showed up late. Shirt untucked. Charm replaced by desperation. He opened with buzzwords about innovation and flexible interpretations. But Sandra interrupted. Your employment agreement cites the MSA explicitly. If 217C is obsolete, why does it still govern your incentives? The room fell silent. HR followed with data. His signed Q1 review now fell under the revised and now suspended model, invalidating equity triggers under both the clause and fair compensation statutes. A ping interrupted. New email from Marcus. Subject: Clause 217C impact scope. Body listed 14 impacted roles. 3 departments. $2.8 million in suspended equity and commissions. Pure data. No emotion. The directors exchanged glances. They had applauded Ryan's arrival months earlier. Now they saw the cost of unchecked modernization. Marcus had declined the invitation to attend, offering email availability only. The chairman reportedly muttered approval at his restraint. Ryan left the room claiming he needed air and never returned that night. In the hallway, his pace quickened like the floor might swallow him. The next morning brought more fallout. Audit logs confirmed 14 unauthorized baseline edits, all under Ryan's credentials. HR issued formal calendar invites for performance equity discussions. Treasury accounts remained frozen. The clause worked like a silent mechanism, pressure sensor on every performance dollar. Marcus logged the changes in the compliance console with the same tired focus he always showed.
He wasn't celebrating.
He was ensuring continuity, the memory of why those safeguards existed in the first place. Pressure built through the week as the frozen payouts rippled outward. Employees who had planned vacations or home repairs based on expected bonuses now faced tight budgets. Resentment growing toward the transformation that cost them personally. Ryan's office light stayed on late, his silhouette pacing as he fielded calls from his own financial advisors. The board's closed session notes leaked indirectly, Clause 217C deemed fully enforceable. No carve-out for executives. Any backdated KPI adjustment without unanimous risk committee approval triggered the hold and mandatory federal review, critical for Pinnacle's government contracts where even perceived irregularities could delay payments or invite inspectors. Legal mirrored Marcus's secure archive session the following morning. He didn't lecture or justify. He explained the origin. Clause 217C was drafted after the 2020 Stratus dispute, he said, voice steady over the line, fingers highlighting text on screen. A vendor claimed ambiguous targets to withhold payment. We added language to prevent retroactive redefinitions, applying to internal metrics as well. It protects everyone, including leadership, from subjective changes. The line went quiet. Someone muted. The small font buried in the provision landed heavily. In cases of KPI revision lacking oversight, all associated bonuses,
Equity.
and claims held pending review. It wasn't punishment, it was design. Ryan attempted one last defense in a follow-up with HR and legal. This is legacy language, doesn't apply to my package. Sandra presented his signed documents again. His Q2 equity bonus, now under hold.
Attestation void.
His hands shook slightly holding the tablet. Not theatrical but telling, the nervous system registering before ego fully accepted. Across the floor, Marcus resumed normal work, finalizing a risk profile as if the company weren't in turmoil. But there was a difference, a faint easing in his shoulders. Like watching a long-predicted storm finally break over parched ground. The board escalated. Budget approvals Ryan initiated were revoked. Access tokens for sensitive files expired. Projects he touched paused for audit or reassigned. Marcus monitored via compliance console. No ego. Just verification that the system responded as engineered. By Friday, the external audit firm arrived, seasoned federal-facing professionals in conservative suits, laptops with strict security protocols. They started with Marcus's clause archive, treating it as foundational. HR updated the compliance handbook overnight, bolding 217C under KPI oversight and executive safeguards. No announcement, but the spine of the company strengthened. Ryan's unraveling accelerated privately. Colleagues reported seeing him in the parking lot arguing on his phone. Voice strained. His Slack remained blank for hours. The once confident leader, who called everyone rock stars, now isolated himself. Marcus received polite but urgent requests for interpretive guidance from HR, legal, even the interim CFO. He responded to one, guidance via secure archive only. Nothing leaves without consent. They agreed instantly, no pushback. In the mirrored session, he reiterated the clause's purpose without flourish. The board listened silently off camera. When he finished, the chairman thanked him formally. Marcus logged off, returned the archive laptop to its drawer, and resumed reviewing fiscal onboarding flows. That weekend, tension hung over the company like fog. Employees traded cautious messages about the freeze's duration. Families adjusted plans. Marcus spent time with his own, quiet dinners. No mention of work. But the clause had already done its work. Halted payouts. Flagged deliverables.
Forced transparency.
Ryan's personal equity, tied to the very metrics he altered, remained locked. The moral weight settled. In chasing short-term optics, he had endangered the trust federal contracts demanded. Marcus had simply remembered the anchors. Monday brought the resignation email at 6:41 a.m., short. Corporate speak. Ryan Voss has chosen to step away. Pursue new opportunities. Thank him for his contributions during transformation. No replies flooded in. Just read receipts in silent judgment. The season of transformation narrative rang hollow against the frozen accounts and pending audits. Audit teams from the external firm dug deeper. Starting from Marcus's provided materials, logs, timestamps, missing approvals, all pointed back to Ryan's actions. The board moved swiftly. Remaining authority Ryan held was stripped. Projects reassigned. His name faded from org charts overnight. Marcus declined the offered advisory role with benefits and title upgrade. His reply email attached a brief memo. Clause 217C was never about punishment. It exists to preserve memory, that performance means more than numbers on a slide. If we forget the anchors, someone must remember. He cleaned his office quietly over the following days, leaving the old cabinet locked, key on its hook. Colleagues stopped by with thanks or notes, but Marcus sought no applause. His work was continuity, not credit. In the aftermath, compliance culture shifted visibly. New training modules highlighted oversight requirements. KPI changes now required documented committee votes. The buried clause became policy cornerstone, no longer forgotten. Employees felt a cautious relief as some payouts thawed once audits cleared, but trust in leadership had been tested. Marcus's departure was understated. No farewell party. Just a final walkthrough and quiet exit. He had planned for inevitability, not glory. Watching the replay of the board session later at home under soft lamplight with rain tapping the window, Marcus saw the final moments. Ryan's stunned face upon learning the clause bore his predecessor's sign-off. Ironclad and permanent. He closed the video without saving. Hands folded, speaking aloud to the storm. I didn't add it for revenge. I added it because trust matters, and someone always forgets. He turned off the lamp, letting silence settle, the peace of a man who ensured the company remembered. The final weeks at Pinnacle Dynamics saw normalization, but scars remained. Bonuses resumed selectively after compliance validation. Yet the episode left a lingering question: how easily ambition can rewrite rules until the rules rewrite back. Federal clients received transparent updates, contracts held. New leadership emphasized diligence over disruption. Marcus's memo became internal reference material, a quiet testament to foresight. In his suburban home office, Marcus reflected without bitterness. He had protected not just payouts but the integrity federal work demanded, memory against forgetting. The clause ensured accountability when flash over substance threatened the foundation. As rain continued outside, he closed his eyes, the storm having passed, leaving clearer ground. The company moved forward stronger, reminded that safeguards buried deep serve everyone, especially when leaders forget why they were written. What happens when memory fades again? That question lingered. An open ethical echo in the quiet American corporate landscape, where rules protect the vulnerable from the bold.